Hi, my name is Nick, and today I'm going to tell you about the two most essential Mogrt expressions. Let's not waste any time. These are expressions for scale and position. We will go over both of these real quick, and I'll show you how to master them. They're not too terribly difficult to pick up on, but are incredibly useful and will end up being in almost all of your Mogrts. Now, if you don't know much about expressions, then I recommend you watch my other video that comes before this, which introduces you to expressions. You can click the link here or continue watching if you're ready to go. So without further ado, let's get into scale. Using this scale expression, we'll be able to give Premiere users the ability to modify their text or object with a simple slider. This basic feature is actually not possible without this one easy expression. But before I give you all the answers, let me make it real clear the problem we're solving. I've gone ahead and set up some text in After Effects, and I'll go ahead and pretend I'm trying to make a Mogrt. I've added opacity by just dragging it into the essential graphics panel, but now I also want to add text scale and position so my Premiere users can move around and resize my text. The second I try to do that, I get an incredibly annoying error though. It says that this isn't supported in my version of After Effects, and to be honest, it's a bit discouraging, but don't fret, there is a solution. Let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is create a new project in After Effects, and once we've done that, we're going to create a new composition. I'll call mine main. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a slider that controls our text scale. So to begin, we're going to need some text. So I'm going to put some in. I'll type in whatever I want, and I'm just gonna make sure that it's about centered. That looks fine. So now we gotta make an expression on our scale property. So to do that, we press Alt or Option, depending on if you're a Mac or Windows user, and we click the little stopwatch right by the scale property. There we go, we have our first expression. Now, let's say our goal right now is to set the text scale to 50%. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is there's an X and a Y axis. So we're going to have to set both to 50%. How do we do that? Well, when you have two values in After Effects, instead of just typing in the value, you have to type in two brackets and put a comma in between them, and then you can type the first value and then the second value. Like this. So if we wanted it to be 50% on the X and Y axis, we just type inside of two brackets 50, 50. There we go. Now if we wanted it to be 150 on the X and Y axis, we just change it to 150, 150. There we go. Perfect. So now what we want to do is we want to hook this up to a slider. Now what I do is I put all my sliders inside of a null layer, and I sort of treat it like a folder to hold all of my controls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new null object. And inside of here, I'm going to right click, go to expression controls, and create a new slider. I'll name mine text scale. Now, if you right click the scale value, you can click this button called edit value. And inside of here, you can actually change the range. So I want the minimum to be something around 10 and the maximum to be maybe 500. There we go. Now, let's create a variable and call this text scale, and set it equal to the slider value. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pick whip it, like we did in the last video, and there we go, we have a text scale variable. Now we can create two brackets with a comma inside of it, put text scale on the left and text scale on the right. Now you can't see my text because my text scale is low, so let's drag that. There we go. We have a text size slider that we could give to Premiere users, so let's go ahead and do that right now. We can throw this right into the essential graphics panel, text size, and now if we exported this as a Mogrt, the Premiere user would have control over text size. Obviously it's not centering quite right, but I'll talk about how to center your text correctly and manage all sorts of alignment problems in the next video, where I talk about source rect. Now that you know how to use expressions on properties with more than one value, let's work with the position of our text and wire it up to two different sliders, one for the horizontal and one for the vertical position. This will give Mogrt users the ability to position their text from inside of Premiere. Let's create a new position slider. So go ahead, right click inside of your null layer, create another slider, and we'll call this horizontal position. And let's go ahead, right click, edit value, and set the range from 0 to 1920. Let's duplicate that, which you can duplicate a slider by selecting it and pressing Command D or Control D. Right click, edit value, and let's go from 0 to 1080 and rename this vertical position. Now I'm going to go ahead and drag these inside of the Essential Graphics panel, just so that These would be available in Premiere if we exported this as a Mogrt. Now, let's create an expression on the position property of the text layer. So Alt or Option, click, drag this out so we can see our expression. Now let's create two variables. Let's create a variable for the horizontal position and one for the vertical position. So I'll create a variable called horizontal pause equals the horizontal slider, which I will go ahead and pick whip that. And I'll create another variable, vertical pause equals, and I'll go ahead and pick whip the vertical slider. We have our two variables equal to the sliders. Now, we're going to have to use our brackets again because this property takes two values and not just one. So we create our brackets, we put a comma inside, and we have our first value and our second value. The first value is the x-axis right here, and the second value is the y-axis. So let's set the x-axis equal to horizontal position and the y-axis equal to vertical position. Oh, pause. There we go. They're totally hidden, and that's completely fine because our sliders are at 0, 0. Let's drag those out. And now, if you move these sliders around, you can move the text wherever you want, and a Premiere user could do this. If you're confused as to why we're doing this, it's because this is something that a user inside of Premiere can't do. In After Effects, we can obviously move our text around, but in Premiere, they'd be stuck with whatever the text was already set at. So using expressions, we can give Premiere users the ability to move their text around, just like as if they were in After Effects. So there we go. To reiterate what I showed you in this video, I showed you how to work with properties that have more than one value that needs to be set. Not only that, I showed you how to hook up sliders to control the scale and position of objects inside of After Effects, so that a Premiere user could have control over the position the same way that we do in After Effects. Alright guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you'd like more content like this, check out the rest of my YouTube channel. I've got tons of videos on how to make insane Mogrts. Feel free to subscribe, and if you're interested in using Mogrts for yourself, check out my website, nicholasHowell.com.